Hi guys, for this Sunday's reflection, I'm going to highlight a letter from a seminarian sent to a former professor of ours in UST. Now, if you have a letter, a special letter that you kept or you are treasuring in your possession, and you'd like us to hear about it, you may submit it to me in my FB page or in Bethany Cafe page and send to me a Word file of the letter, and I will read it to you whenever there's an opportunity to do so. Now, if you don't have a letter, a kept letter, then maybe you can also share your own letter. You can entitle it Love Letter to God, or Love Letter to God in the Time of COVID-19. So we'd like to hear from you. We'd like to inspire our fellow Christians and Catholic through your letter and through your inspiring words and experiences. Hello Bethanians, welcome once again to Bethany Virtual Cafe. So we are now on the 21st Sunday in Ordinary Time, Year B. The readings for this Sunday will be flashed in the screen. Now, as per our practice, I'm going to shout out to these new subscribers who continue to help grow this channel. So let us welcome the following new subscribers. Shout out to Halabira Group. I would suppose that this is a group from here in Aklan, as we are known for the Ati-Atihan. Also, shout out to Mike Reynaldo. Hello Mike, and thank you for subscribing to my channel and for subscribing also to the Aklan Cable Sunday coverage. And also to Ed's Perk and Contra Costa County Living. So I would suppose that this is from Oakley. This Sunday, as we celebrate the 21st Sunday in Ordinary Time, I'd like to give honor and to remember most especially a friend of mine who died to COVID and pneumonia early this week. And so as I remember him, I'd like to read a letter that was sent to a professor of ours back in UST, and it is a treasured letter that he has kept to himself for a period of time. Now, there was a time in our class when he personally read the letter to us in order to speak something about the topic of discussion we had that day in class. Actually, I could remember vividly the letter than the topic we had that day in class. And so, as I read this letter, I'd like us also to maybe remember those people whom we love, especially our loved ones who may have died because of COVID-19. And let us always keep them in our prayers for healing, prayers most especially for peace to those grieving members of the family, and to all of us who are left behind. Let me begin with the letter. Dear Father, when I was first diagnosed with brain cancer in February 1992, it was not the shock of discovering I had cancer that knocked me to my knees. It was the doctors I had telling me that I probably had 8 to 12 weeks survival time. I could not make myself believe this. I needed to find something positive, some bit of hope I could believe in and hang on to. I knew my diagnosis was bad, Two tumors in my brain is like giving me 50-50 chances of survival. Bad news. But I need to find a way to believe in a positive outcome. The surgeries and the chemo could take care of the cancer, but I had to start feeling I could survive long term. As a seminarian aspiring for the priesthood, I cannot help but lose faith in my vocation sometimes. The thought of an impending death overwhelms me more than the thought of getting ordained after my senior year and eventually become a priest. There are times when at the middle of the class I would feel tremendous pain in my head and would then have seizures. The class would be disrupted and all attention would be directed to me. The symptoms would cause tremendous pain, not only to myself physically, but to my classmates whose learning is also disrupted because of that. I feel like I am a cause for hate when right from the very beginning, all I wanted was to become a channel of peace and unity in the priesthood. Now, this part of the letter reminded me of the gospel passage in Luke when Jesus said these very words, "Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple." In fact, we hear similar words this Sunday in our gospel. Because in our gospel, Jesus preaches and calls himself as the bread of life. And so when he delivered this message to some of his disciples, they were wondering how truthful those words were. Because for them, how could this man tell us to eat his flesh and drink his blood? Because literally, that would be cannibalism, right? And so to those people, some of his disciples who heard these words decided to leave Jesus behind. And as they left, they went back to what they were doing before they followed him. So the same thing, Jeremiah was also experiencing the same rejection as Jesus experienced in the gospel. Because Jesus warns us, his disciples of today, that if we follow him, we have to be ready. We have to be ready for rejection. Because there are those people who may not believe the same way as we do, who may not have the same principles as we do, who does not consider Jesus' words as truthful, but considers them probably as too good to be true, or maybe a hearsay, or worse, even considers them to be false, fake news. And so Jeremiah, in this part of his life, has experienced the same way, especially rejection, even from those people whom he expected to accept him, especially in his trying condition and in his suffering and cancer. And so he continues. The fight for cancer was the greatest challenge I ever had, and I believe the greatest until I died. I was almost tempted to leave the seminary at some point because of this illness, but the very sufferings of Christ on the cross moves me in some sort of way to understand its mystery. By laying at the feet of the cross the burdens that had lain heavily upon me, I discovered that I was loved by God. I found the strength that could change my life forever as I await my ordination, and yes, death, which could be sooner than I thought. Well, the mystery of the cross. This is something that I think every disciple and follower of Jesus should bear in mind. Because as we follow Jesus, coupled in that discipleship and following him is the cross. We could not do away with the cross. Why? Because Jesus himself suffered, died on the cross. And as we all know in the Paschal mystery, passion, death, and resurrection, before Jesus went to heaven in his resurrection, he first suffered and died. So if we follow Jesus, we follow by suffering our own passion, dying from sinfulness, dying from ourselves, in order for us eventually to be resurrected with Jesus. In Jeremiah at this point felt and has concretely understood what it is to live the cross of Jesus, what it is or how it is to follow in his footsteps, and how it is to suffer in the first place. Because as we suffer, we all know that we suffer like Jesus. But as we suffer with Jesus, we also walk with him in that suffering. Let us move on to the last part of the letter. Father, if I give up now, how will I become a good servant of God? Giving up now would mean allowing my physical weakness overpower God's tremendous gift of grace. I may be weak physically, but I am strong spiritually. I will move on as much as I could and persevere just like Christ's apostles and disciples. If priesthood is so far-fetched, I will give my all in order to achieve it with or without cancer. My yearning for the priesthood is great, but my love for God is even greater. Please continue praying for me as I fight for cancer and at the same time persevere in my vocation to the priesthood. Sincerely, Brother Jeremiah. It is wonderful to note that Jeremiah's suffering was something that I believe each and every one of us could relate to, especially in this time of the pandemic. You know, when my friend died of COVID a few days ago, prior to his death, he had the chance to go to confession and be administered of the sacrament of anointing of the sick. But since he was suffering from COVID, I was not allowed personally to come visit him in the hospital. So we did the sacraments or the last rites through the internet or virtually. I was looking for the time and moment that I'll be allowed to go to the hospital so I could give him the holy oils, especially the oil for the sick. But I never had the chance to do so. But as I was administering the last sacraments to him, I really feel in his heart the very sincerity coming from his heart. And I know that in the midst of the suffering that he was going through at the time, he believes and have faith that God's saving hand is upon him, that God's help and aid and spiritual assurance, reassurance of peace, reassurances of joy, as well as comfort will be attained. Jeremiah died in the hospital, but prior to his death, he had the chance to be ordained as a deacon. He was ordained in the same hospital where he was confined. The bishop was there in the presence of loved ones, as well as some of his priest friends who were able to come or to the ritual of ordination. He had a chance to do his first baptism. The first baptism, in fact, of his niece, who was also born in the same hospital. Such a wonderful, though simple celebration, but a celebration that's truly enjoyed by everyone. And it was filled with rejoicing, laughter, and peace. Well, for my friend Joy, though his name Joy, he was not able to experience the same thing because of COVID, and that people are forbidden to come visit him physically. He was more or less alone. He was isolated. He was away from people that he loved so dearly. And so, to Joy, I pray for peace. I pray for your eternal repose. May God in heaven grant you the peace that you need. I will pray for you for always, and may you pray for all of us here left behind. As you rest in God's peace, please be with us in prayer. Pray, intercede for us, that healing will be achieved in this world. God bless us all. For this Sunday's symbol, as per our practice, is a letter. A letter is a means of communication. Back in a time when we do snail mails, it is something that we anticipate so dearly, especially if it's coming from a beloved, or it's coming from someone whom we love so dearly. And so when it comes, after great anticipation, we feel so relieved. We feel so joyful and rejoicing that finally the letter from the beloved has arrived. A letter is a symbol of memory. A letter is a symbol of maybe conversation, communication, something that we use in order to deliver not only information, but also deliver things from the heart, because they come from our hearts, they come from our love, they come from the anticipation of mutual self-giving in love. And so this Sunday, maybe it would be good for us to go back and maybe see those letters that we have, or maybe today, emails. But if you have letters or snail mails, maybe you can look back to them and read some of those treasured letters. Read them and see how it strikes your innermost feeling and heart. And as it strikes you so deeply, may you be able to remember the good times, to remember the times when you were trying to deliver a message of love to someone, a message of concern, a message of reassurances, and even a message of gratitude, and a message that would continually inspire you to move on with your life from here on. Till next Sunday.